The Combioserve Consortium aims to identify the conditions that lead to successful community conservation in selected locations in Mexico, Brazil, and Bolivia, working in partnership with civil society organizations, rural and indigenous communities. The consortium assesses past and present environmental changes and future change scenarios, evaluates the dependence of communities on natural resources and on the services or benefits provided by ecosystems, and analyzes people's capacity to adapt to diverse agents or factors that might affect them or cause them stress. The project team is also assessing the cultural traditions, knowledge, and varied institutional arrangements which enable such communities to implement collective conservation strategies and solve social problems and conflicts related to natural resources. The consortium has adopted a co-investigation approach by which local researchers chosen by the communities themselves are encouraged to build up their own research questions in relation to the project's overall theme. Those researchers have been largely supported by the academic institutions and civil society organizations, who also train them for the use of GPS and satellite imagery. In this video, we present the main findings related to the change of land use in certain study sites, as well as the main local strategies and conservation initiatives that aim to reduce or prevent the destruction of the forest, while at the same time producing resources for the communities themselves. Pilonlajas, Bolivia. The Tissimani communities of Alto Colorado and San Luis Chico are part of the Pilonlajas Biosphere Reserve and Communal Lands. They are located 350 kilometers north of La Paz, between the eastern slope of the Andes mountain range and the Beni Savanna. Alto Colorado, which has approximately 120 inhabitants, was established on the eastern limit of the reserve and is a 3-hour bus journey from Ruxainabaque, the region's main town. San Luis Chico, on the other hand, located in the center of the reserve, has an even smaller population of 60 inhabitants. Its access from Alto Colorado remains difficult, either by boat or on foot. In 1992, the Bolivian President Jaime Paz Zamora officially created the Pilonlajas Biosphere Reserve and Communal Lands in the name of the Tissimani and Moceteni indigenous populations, the majority of whom live in forest regions. The reserve, covering 400,000 hectares, is considered both a reserve and an indigenous territory. Forestry is the main source of income for the region's rural areas. The forest in the reserve represents an important repository of valuable wood and non-timber forest products, such as jatata palm leaves. During the 1980s, following construction of the road between Yucumo and Ruxainabaque, a large number of logging companies was established in the area. Those companies, who come under the official responsibility of the Center for Forest Development, have inappropriately exploited forest resources within the reserve for more than 15 years. Furthermore, the indigenous communities have not received any benefit from this activity. Following this devastation, very few zones currently remain intact. The Tissimani grow different species of plants, which are primarily used for subsistence purposes or sold at market. The land can be used in different ways, as chaco or fallow land, barbecho, or as vegetable gardens, terraces or canchones. Plantain, cassava, rice and corn are some of the principal crops grown by the Tissimani in the reserve. Hunting and fishing are very important activities for certain communities, such as San Luis Chico, although not for Alto Colorado. The Tissimani from São Luís Chico have been growing cocoa in agroforestry systems for over 6 years. The activities of the large logging companies now form part of the Tissimani's daily lives and have a significant impact on their territory, forest resources, and landscape dynamics. The Combioserve project studied changes to land use and forest cover. Landscape changes in Pilonlajas. Mapping of the use and occupation of the lands has demonstrated that the lowland tropical forest is the type of vegetation most impacted by agriculture. The mapping conducted throughout the years show a successive reduction of the lowland tropical forest total area. Between 1989 and 1996, it suffered a reduction of 171 square kilometers, 4.9%. Between 1996 and 2001, there was a reduction of 180 square kilometers. And between 2001 and 2011, the reduction reached 269 square kilometers, 7.8%. Rainforest devastation between 2001 and 2011 was highly significant, demonstrating an increase in agricultural activity which has progressively intensified over the last 10 years. However, other types of forest in the highlands have experienced little reduction, partly because they are located in extremely high areas which are hard to access. The areas that have suffered the greatest modification are principally located along the main highway, and it is already possible to identify parallel pathways extending perpendicular to the highway in a fishbone pattern. The areas near the rivers have also suffered impacts, albeit to a lesser extent. Community conservation initiatives in Pilonlajas. Some ongoing community conservation strategies in the indigenous communities of Pilonlajas, such as São Luís Chico, have sought to reduce the pace of forest destruction, while also generating income for the communities. These include the adoption of more environmentally friendly production systems, such as agroforestry systems for the production of cacao, where commercial planting is conducted in the shade of native trees and fruit. Such systems may help to maintain an important level of plant and animal diversity. Furthermore, other community conservation initiatives, such as the production of native seedlings for reforestation, are also underway. However, only the effective protection of the indigenous territory and the reserve will be able to ensure a rich forest landscape and to maintain the way of life of the Tissimani, who heavily depend on biodiversity. The southern of Bahia, Brazil. The majority of the Pataxó people currently reside in legally recognized territories in the state of Minas Gerais and Bahia. There are 10 indigenous lands in total, from which 2 are located in Minas Gerais and 8 in the extreme south of Bahia. The project directly works with the communities of Pé do Monte and Jaqueira Reserve, both in the state of Bahia. The community of Pé do Monte is located south of the municipality of Porto Seguro and belongs to the Barra Velha indigenous land. The Jaqueira Reserve, on the other hand, is part of the Coroa Vermelha indigenous land, located north of the municipality of Porto Seguro and south of Santa Cruz Cabralha. The Jaqueira Reserve covers an area of 827 hectares from the total indigenous land. Despite the fact that the reserve belongs to the Coroa Vermelha indigenous land, it is administered by the same group of people which is responsible for the Pataxó Ecotourism Association, Aspectur. Approximately 28 families live in the Pé do Monte community, and around 40 people work at the Jaqueira Reserve. The indigenous village of Coroa Vermelha was established in 1972 in the same location of a monument which symbolizes the first Catholic Mass held in Brazil. Due to its historical importance, the location quickly developed the potential for tourism, and in some ways the indigenous occupation came to be advantageous for the government. In 1997, the land was officially recognized as an indigenous territory. In 1998, a group of families from Coroa Vermelha founded the Jaqueira Reserve, which is a preserved forest area dedicated to the ethnotourism. Coroa Vermelha's economy is principally based on the production and sale of handcrafts, wooden utensils, and jewelry made from seeds. Some of the families have small properties in the rural part of the indigenous territory, outside the urban area where the houses are located, where they practice subsistence farming and keep chickens. Within the village, a few families are able to keep chickens in their gardens. However, most need to purchase all the food they consume. The overlap between the Barra Velha indigenous land and the Monte Pascoal National Park is at the center of a series of conflicts between the Pataxó people and the Brazilian government, represented by its environmental body, the Chico Mendes Institute for Biodiversity Conservation. However, for the families who live in the Pé do Monte village, located right at the park's entrance, this relationship has positive consequences, as some of them work as guides and sell handicrafts for tourists. The indigenous village of Pé do Monte was established in 1999 at this very emblematic area. The traditional territory that was previously lost to large-scale landowners was regained after the creation of the national park.
A chegada aqui daqui do Parque Nacional Monte Pascoal, nós temos uma organização, o Conselho de Cacique. Isso foi em 99, uma reunião em Boca da Mata, e aí quando chegou no dia 19 de agosto nós viemos para aqui. Todo 19 de agosto nós estamos, faz anos que nós estamos aqui. Hoje nós estamos com 14 anos, nós estamos aqui no Parque Nacional Monte Pascoal.
Pé do Monte's economy is essentially based on the production and sale of handicrafts, wooden utensils and jewelry made from seeds. Some families grow agricultural products for their own consumption and keep chickens. Some grow cocoa, and a few families are able to keep chickens in their gardens. However, most have to buy all the food they consume. Several factors have driven to changes on the landscape of South Bahia, including the deforestation caused by the eucalyptus plantation and agricultural production. These changes have an impact on both the Pataxó indigenous lands and on the numerous protected areas in the region, and represent a significant threat to the conservation of its biodiversity and ecosystems. We will now look at the changes to land use analyzed by the Combioserve project and how the Pataxó have attempted to address them through community conservation initiatives. Landscape changes in southern Bahia. The changes that took place between 1987 and 2011 demonstrate a loss of 492 square kilometers of vegetation. The forested areas were taken over by agricultural and livestock activities, mainly in the form of pasture and eucalyptus plantations. Although the agricultural and pasture land areas did not alter a great deal, this is not to say that no changes occurred. Areas previously used for agriculture and cattle raising have been taken over by the planting of eucalyptus, which has spread rapidly across the country since the 1980s, particularly in Bahia and Minas Gerais. In 1987, in the southeast of Bahia, eucalyptus cultivation covered an area of 4 square kilometers. By 2011, this had risen to 457 square kilometers. It is important to note that protected areas exist in the municipalities, which contain most of the preserved vegetation. The land around the Jaqueira Reserve has not suffered many alterations. However, around the Monte Pascoal National Park, where the Pé do Monte community is located, significant amounts of forest areas have been converted to agriculture, principally in the north of the park. These areas represent ranches that have been reclaimed by the Pataxó as part of the Barra Velha indigenous land. To reduce the pace of forest destruction, the Pataxó have adopted a range of community conservation initiatives, as we will see now. Community conservation initiatives by Pataxó in southern Bahia. The families who came to the Pé do Monte community from the coastal village of Barra Velha are committed to looking after the remaining Atlantic forest in the park. Residents from Pé do Monte have begun to control entry to the park and, as an economic alternative, offer assistance as guides for ecological and ethnotourism trails. They also intend to control and preserve the forest and invest in agroforestry systems so that they can improve their standard of living and preserve the forest.
É o trabalho que a gente, para mim chegar até essa posição que hoje eu estou fazendo e pretendo fazer mais para frente, a FUNAI ela pagou um rapaz chamado Marcos para dar esse curso para a gente no Agrofloresta. Aí a gente começou por Barra Velha, aí terminamos, fomos para Águas Belas e daí a gente foi até Paraná, né, fazer esse curso do Agrofloresta. O Agrofloresta, que é o que vem do agroecologia, tá entendendo? Aí aqui dentro de uma roça dessa aqui, ó, eu tenho banana e tenho cacau e tem jaca e café e pimenta do reino. Aí já tem plantado cupuaçu, açaí e laranja. Isso aí é o meu agrofloresta. Aqui a gente não roça não, tudo que a gente corta em cima, poda as plantas, vai descendo tudo no chão, que é para poder servir de adubo, porque isso aqui era uma terra seca. Então a terra precisa de cobertura. Então eu não roço, não queimo, que é para poder, aqui vai sair o adubo orgânico, para poder fortalecer meu pé de açaí.
Recently, the Chico Mendes Institute has contracted and trained 22 Pataxó as park wardens to support their work in protecting the park from fires and deforestation, which frequently occur around the park. Initiatives such as the community reforestation conducted in Coroa Vermelha, with the production and distribution of native plant seedlings by community researcher Capimbará, may also help to promote the recovery of deforested areas within the indigenous territory and its surroundings.
Quando eu comprei esse terreno aqui, era do Carajá, ele era cacique na época, sabe? Não tinha vegetação nenhuma, só tinha uns pés de coco velho que não produziam um fruto bom, né? Era um coco que não dava bem, só sujeira. E quando eu comprei aqui, eu trabalhava na reserva da Jaqueira, né? Como monitor ecológico. E depois eu fui trabalhar na escola como conscientizador ambiental, né? Com criança, né? O que é o meio ambiente? É uma palavra simples. Mas o meio ambiente é um conjunto de elementos, fatores necessários à vida. O aluno tem que entender o que é isso. O que é isso? É envolvido todo tipo de vivo e não vivo, né? Que está ali junto, que a gente tem que cuidar. Não pode estar movimentando com fogo. Nem tudo que está morto você pode destruir de vez, que muitas das vezes uma planta morre para dar vida a outra. É bem parecido com a gente, né? Quando eu falei, eu arranquei minha planta. O solo está pegado. Essa planta aqui que eu falei que ela é pioneira, tá vendo? Ela cresce primeiro e morre primeiro. Ela cria condições dessa aqui viver. Então essa aqui para mim é uma planta especial, que é o ipê roxo. Ele é o ipê roxo nativo da Mata Atlântica.
In the Jaqueira Reserve, the main community initiatives to maintain the forest and generate income for families are ethnotourism, environmental education, and training young Pataxós to be visitor guides and to research their own culture.
Meu nome é Nitinauã Pataxó, eu sou uma liderança aqui na Reserva da Jaqueira, uma das fundadoras desse trabalho. A Reserva da Jaqueira para nós é um lugar onde nós procuramos fortalecer a nossa cultura, trabalhar a conscientização da preservação da mata e questão da Mata Atlântica mesmo, né? Que nós temos aqui 827 hectares de floresta toda preservada, com biodiversidade de fauna e de flora, vamos dizer assim, muito rica para nós, né? Que em alguns lugares tem muitos animais que são ameaçados de extinção, pássaro, e aqui nós temos deles assim em quantidade.
The Pataxó of Jaqueira have obtained recognition as an indigenous village or aldeia from the National Indigenous Foundation, FUNAI, a federal government body within the Ministry of Justice. Strengthening their political organization by electing Carajá as a local leader may also support them in effectively defending their territory and forest. Lessons learned. An examination of landscape changes in the study sites has demonstrated in the Bolivian case that deforestation is related to the arrival of settlers and the construction of a highway around the Pilonlajas reserve. In Brazil, the destruction of the forest is related to the extension of eucalyptus cultivation into areas of natural vegetation and protected areas, as well as around the indigenous land, which has led to environmental conflicts with the Pataxó people. Community conservation initiatives, such as reforestation, adopting agroforestry systems, strengthening political organization and other activities by the Tissimani and the Pataxó, are examples of cultural resistance, which may serve as example for other peoples experiencing similar dilemmas across Latin America. The Combioserve project is assessing the success of such initiatives through an innovative approach of co-investigation, as well as through partnerships with civil society organizations and communities.
Na paz de Jesus Cristo, todo mal vai carregar. Na paz de Jesus Cristo, todo mal vai carregar. Vida miudinho, eu tô na rescisão. Vida miudinho, todo mal vai carregar. Vida miudinho, eu tô na rescisão. Vida miudinho, todo